Hey everyone, today we're talking about something really important from the past, the 100 Years' War between France and England. This wasn't just a short fight. It lasted from 1337 to 1453. That's more than 100 years of battles, tension, and big changes that shaped both countries. To understand how it all began, we need to go way back. In 1066, William the Conqueror became the King of England. But he was already the Duke of Normandy, a part of France. So he ended up ruling land in both countries. Over time, English kings gained control of a large part of western France, from the north near the Seine River, all the way down to the Pyrenees Mountains. Here's the thing. They held this land as vassals of the French king, which meant they were supposed to be under the French ruler's power. But since they were also kings of England, they were actually stronger than the French king. That led to a lot of fights and wars over who should really have the power. Eventually, the English lost almost all their land in France, except for a place called Aquitaine in the southwest. Up until this point, most of these fights were just between kings. Regular people didn't really get involved, and no one really thought of themselves as part of a country. People in Aquitaine didn't even feel like they were French. They preferred the English kings over the French ones living in Paris. But all that began to change during the 100 Years' War. As the two countries kept fighting, the people started to feel more connected to their own side. People in Aquitaine began to feel more French and turned against England. And in England, people from different backgrounds, like the Saxons and the Normans, began to think of themselves as simply English. Even though the war caused a lot of pain, it also helped people in both countries feel proud of where they were from. This was the beginning of national pride or patriotism. So what started the war? The French king died in 1328 without a son to take over. Two people claimed they should be the next king: Philip, the king's cousin and Duke of Valois, and Edward III of England, the king's nephew. The French nobles chose Philip, who became King Philip VI. Edward didn't like that decision, but he accepted it for a while. Then, 9 years later, more problems popped up, and Edward said he had the right to be King of France too. For the first 8 years, neither side won big battles, except the English had a major win at sea. But in the 9th year, everything changed. The English won a huge battle on land called the Battle of Crécy. It happened not far from Paris. The French army was twice the size of the English, and was full of knights in heavy armor, riding horses and carrying swords and lances. But the English had a secret weapon: archers. Most of their soldiers were on foot and trained with bows and arrows from a young age. English boys started practicing archery when they were just 6 or 7 years old. As they got older, they used bigger and stronger bows, learning how to shoot with the powerful longbows their fathers used. Archery was so important that even on holidays, men and boys would practice together in the fields. Because of all that practice, English archers became the best in Europe. Their arrows were strong enough to go through armor or bring down a knight's horse from far away. That's how the English won at Crécy. It changed how battles were fought in the Middle Ages, and proved just how powerful the English archers really were. Even though the French had more soldiers, things weren't going their way. King Edward of England had a smart strategy. He placed his archers on top of a hill, with his knights waiting behind them. His 15-year-old son, the Black Prince, led the front line, while Edward stayed back on another hill, keeping an eye on the battlefield. The French brought a lot of crossbowmen, which were powerful but slow. On top of that, it rained before the battle, and the rain ruined their bowstrings. The English kept theirs dry, so when the fight started, their archers were ready. When the French crossbowmen were ordered to attack, they didn't want to, they were nervous. The English archers stepped forward and shot a wave of arrows. The French crossbowmen panicked and ran away. King Philip of France got angry and thought his crossbowmen were cowards. He told his knights to cut them down, and that's what happened. French knights started attacking their own soldiers while English arrows kept raining down. It was total chaos. Then the French knights charged the English lines. Some of Edward's men worried that the young Black Prince might be in trouble. They asked King Edward if they should go help him. But Edward asked, "Is he dead or badly hurt?" When they said no, Edward replied, "Then let him earn his place. I want this day to be his victory." Meanwhile, something amazing was happening on the French side. The old king of Bohemia was blind, but he still wanted to fight. He asked his men to tie their horses together and lead him into battle. They did just that. The blind king fought bravely, and when the battle was over, their bodies were found still tied together. In the end, the English won. Thousands of French soldiers were killed, and King Philip barely escaped. The Black Prince proved himself as a leader, but the English archers were the real reason for the victory. Soon after, the war paused because of a horrible sickness, the Black Death. It came from Asia and spread quickly, killing about half the people in England and doing the same in France. 10 years later, in 1356, the war started again. The Black Prince led an English army from Aquitaine deep into France. But this time, King John of France had a much bigger army and blocked their path near the city of Poitiers. The English were badly outnumbered. The Black Prince offered to give back all the land and prisoners they had taken, and even promised not to fight France for 7 years if they could just leave safely. But King John refused. He wanted a clear win. So the battle started. Just like before, the English took a strong position on a hill and placed their archers behind thick hedges. As the French army came closer, the English let loose with their arrows. Horses panicked, knights were thrown off, and the field turned into a mess. The French wore heavy armor. If a knight fell off his horse, he couldn't get back up without help. That made things even worse. The English broke through one group, then another, and finally the last. The French yelled, "Mount Joy, Saint Denis," while the English shouted back, "Saint George, Guienne." The sounds of battle filled the air, arrows hitting metal, swords clashing, and armor breaking. At the end, most of the French soldiers were either running away or captured. Only one part of the army was still fighting. That's where King John and his 13-year-old son Philip were. They stood their ground and fought hard. While the king swung his battle axe, Philip kept yelling to warn him of incoming attacks. Eventually, King John had no choice but to surrender. He and his son were taken to the Black Prince's tent. But instead of treating them like enemies, the prince welcomed them kindly and even served them food himself. Still, they were held for several years until France could pay the ransom to set them free. And thanks for watching. More incredible stories from this wild time are coming up next, so please like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned.